December 16th, 1944, 5:30 in the morning, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Something warm splashed across Captain James Parker's face. He opened his eyes in the darkness of the medical tent and wiped his cheek. His fingers came away wet. He smelled copper, blood. He sat up fast. The cot 3 feet from his was empty. Not empty. The blanket was there, but the man who had been sleeping under it was gone from the chest up. Corporal Michael Chen from San Francisco, 22 years old, had been joking last night about the apple pie his mother used to make. Now there was just legs and a torso and blood spreading across the canvas floor. The tent wall ripped open, not from wind, from the pressure wave of an explosion that hit so close, Parker felt it in his teeth. Through the torn canvas, he could see the forest lighting up like a carnival. White flash, thunder crack, white flash, thunder crack, over and over and over. The rhythm was mechanical, precise, not random artillery. This was a barrage, a planned barrage. He grabbed his medical bag and helmet and stumbled through the tent flap. The world outside had transformed into something from a nightmare. The forest was on fire. Trees that had been standing were now horizontal. Trees that were still vertical were exploding as shells hit them and sent wooden shrapnel through the air like thousands of knives. A man ran past him. No, not ran. The man had no legs below the knees. He was crawling on his hands, dragging stumps that left parallel tracks of blood in the snow. His mouth was open, but Parker could not hear him screaming over the sound of the barrage. Parker ran toward him, dropped to his knees. The man's face was grey, shock. Maybe 30 seconds until he passed out. Maybe 2 minutes until his heart stopped from blood loss. "What is your name?" The man's lips moved. No sound came out. Parker pulled a tourniquet from his bag, wrapped it around what remained of the right leg, pulled it tight. The bleeding slowed, but did not stop. The femoral artery was cut too high. The tourniquet was not going to save him. Nothing was going to save him. "Stay with me. Stay with me. Help is coming." It was a lie. No help was coming. Parker was the help, and he had nothing that could fix this. The man's eyes found Parker's face. His lips moved again. This time Parker heard it, a whisper under the thunder of artillery. "Mom." Then his eyes went empty. Parker closed them, stood up, turned toward the medical tent. It was gone. A direct hit had collapsed the entire structure. The other 3 doctors who had been sleeping inside were buried under smoking canvas and shattered wooden poles. He ran toward it, started pulling at the debris. His hands found something soft, an arm. He pulled. The arm came away from the body it had been attached to. He dropped it and kept digging. Found another body. This one was Dr. Robert Hayes from Boston. Married, 3 kids. Half his skull was missing. Captain Parker. He spun around. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was standing there. Webb's uniform was shredded down the left side. Burns, 3rd degree. His left arm hung at a wrong angle. Broken, but he was standing. He was alive. "Marcus, what the hell is happening?" Webb's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of a man in shock who was still trying to do his job. The Germans launched a major offensive at 05:30. 90 minutes of artillery barrage. Intelligence estimates 1,600 guns firing simultaneously across an 80-mile front. This is not a raid. This is an invasion. That is not possible. We have intelligence. The Wehrmacht is broken. They do not have the resources. Webb laughed. It sounded like a cough. "Then you better tell that to the 3 Panzer divisions currently driving through the Losheim Gap, because they seem pretty fucking unbroken to me. How many casualties?" Webb looked at the burning forest. "Unknown. Communications are down. Half the units are not responding. Best guess? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They hit us while we were sleeping. Hit us in a sector we thought was quiet. Some companies were completely overrun before they even got their boots on. The artillery barrage shifted. The shells that had been falling on their position started walking east, toward the front lines, toward the American soldiers who were dug in along the German border. The sound changed, became more distant. but did not stop. Parker looked at his watch. It was 6:15, 45 minutes of continuous artillery. In the Pacific, they called it softening up the target. In Europe, they called it preparation fire. Whatever you called it, the purpose was the same. Kill as many of the enemy as possible before your infantry arrived to finish the job. We need to get to the field hospital. See who is still alive. Webb shook his head. Field hospital took a direct hit. 30 patients inside. Maybe 5 survivors. I already checked. Where is General Taylor? Command post, 2 miles west. I was heading there when I saw you. They walked through what had been their camp, past burning tents, past bodies, past wounded men who were trying to crawl towards safety, but there was no safety. The artillery had done its job. The camp was destroyed. They found a jeep that still had 4 wheels and an engine that turned over. Webb drove. His broken arm made him clumsy with the gear shift, but he managed. Parker sat in the passenger seat and tried not to look at the things they passed on the road. Refugees, soldiers, some alive, most not. They reached the command post at 06:45. It was chaos. Officers shouting into radios, maps spread across tables, Major General Maxwell Taylor in the center of it all. His normally composed face was tight with anger. He saw Parker and Webb and pointed. "You two, get over here." They pushed through the crowd of officers. Taylor's finger stabbed at the map. "Gentlemen, we are in deep trouble. The Germans have committed 3 armies to this offensive. 6th SS Panzer Army in the north, 5th Panzer Army in the center, 7th Army in the south. Best intelligence estimates say 250,000 troops, maybe more. They achieved complete tactical surprise. Half our units are falling back. The other half are surrounded. The Germans are driving west toward the Meuse River. If they reach it, they split our entire army in half." "What are our orders?" an officer asked. Taylor looked up. His eyes were red. From smoke or exhaustion or both. The 101st Airborne is being redeployed to Bastogne. It is a road junction in Belgium. 7 roads meet there. Whoever controls Bastogne controls movement through this entire region. 8. Corps is collapsing. Germans are pouring through the gaps. Supreme Headquarters thinks if we can hold Bastogne, we can anchor the southern flank. Buy time for a counterattack. Someone asked the question everyone was thinking. "Sir, how many men do we have?" Taylor's jaw tightened. "The 101st has approximately 11,000 soldiers. With attachments from other units, maybe 18,000 total when everyone arrives. Against 250,000 Germans." The room went silent. Parker did the math. Roughly 14 to 1 odds, in defensive positions that might be manageable. In the open, it was suicide. "What about air support?" Taylor gestured at the window. Outside, the sky was grey, fog rolling in, visibility maybe 100 yards. Weather report says fog, snow, and low clouds for the next week. Minimum. No close air support. No resupply drops. No reconnaissance. We are on our own. Parker felt something cold settle in his stomach. The 101st Airborne's greatest advantage had always been mobility and air support. Take that away, and they were just light infantry with no heavy weapons, no tanks, no artillery worth mentioning, being asked to hold a fixed position against panzer divisions. "Captain Parker," he snapped to attention. "Yes, sir." "You are going to Bastogne. Set up a field hospital. Take whatever supplies you can carry. Once we are in position, we will be surrounded. No resupply, no evacuation. You will have to treat wounded with what you bring. Make it count." "Understood, sir." "How long will we need to hold?" Taylor met his eyes. "As long as it takes for Third Army to fight their way through. Could be days, could be longer. And if they do not make it, then we die there. But we make the Germans pay for every inch of ground, because if Bastogne falls, the Germans win. They reach Antwerp, they split our armies. They might win this whole damn war. So we hold, no matter what." Parker and Webb spent the next 4 hours loading trucks, medical supplies, bandages, morphine, sulfur powder, surgical instruments, plasma for transfusions, blankets, food, everything they could fit into 6 trucks. The convoy formed up at noon, 50 miles from their current position to Bastogne. The roads were clogged with refugees fleeing east, away from the German advance. Old men, women, children, carrying whatever they could, pushing carts loaded with possessions. Their faces were blank, shock, terror. They had seen this before. In 1940, when the Germans invaded. Now it was happening again. Parker rode in the lead truck next to Corporal Danny Frost. Danny was 20 years old, had been a veterinary student at Ohio State before the war. Smart kid, steady hands, good under pressure. But his face was pale now. His hands shook on the steering wheel. "Doc, you think we can actually hold this town?" Parker watched an old woman trudging past. She was carrying a child, maybe 2 years old. The child was not moving. He looked away. "We do not have a choice, Danny. Those people need us to buy them time to evacuate. Third Army needs us to hold the road junction so the Germans cannot drive to Antwerp. We hold or everything falls apart." Danny was quiet for a long time. Then, "Doc, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If it looks bad, if I am not going to make it, I do not want to die screaming. My dad, he was in the First War, gassed at Belleau Wood. I watched him cough up pieces of his lungs for 10 years before he finally died. I do not want that, if it comes to it. Just, make it quick." Parker looked at the kid's profile. 20 years old, should be worried about exams and girls, not about how he was going to die. "You are not going to die, Danny. I am going to make sure of it." Another lie. But what else could he say? They reached Bastogne at 1600 hours, 4 in the afternoon. The winter sun was already setting. The town was small, stone buildings, narrow streets, a church with a tall spire in the central square. Population maybe 4,000 on a normal day. Right now, it looked like 40,000, with all the refugees streaming through. General Taylor had arrived ahead of them. He was in the town hall with a map spread across a table. Parker found him surrounded by officers. "Captain, you made good time. I need you to set up your hospital in the church basement. Stone walls, some protection from artillery. You will be treating our wounded and civilians. Make it work." Parker looked at the map. Bastogne sat at the junction of 7 roads. They radiated out like spokes on a wheel. North, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast. Whoever controlled this town controlled the entire region. "Sir, what is our tactical situation?" Taylor's finger traced the roads. "We have maybe 18,000 men total. Mix of 101st. Some armor, artillery, engineers. The Germans have us surrounded, or will soon. Reports put at least 5 divisions converging on this position. 3 panzer, 2 infantry. They outnumber us approximately 5 to 1. Maybe more. Our orders? Hold until Third Army relieves us. General Patton is repositioning for a counterattack, but his forces are currently 90 miles south. He has to fight his way through German lines. How long? Unknown. Days minimum. Maybe a week. What if Third Army does not make it?" Taylor looked at him. "Then we hold anyway, because if Bastogne falls, the Germans win." Parker and his team spent the rest of the evening turning the church basement into a surgical theater. The space was cold. Stone walls, vaulted ceiling, dirt floor. He set up operating tables using doors torn off their hinges and laid across sawhorses, hung lanterns from iron hooks, organized supplies, morphine, bandages, instruments. His medical staff consisted of himself, 3 other doctors, 9 medics, and 4 nurses. Not enough. Not nearly enough for what was coming. The first wounded arrived at 2300 hours. A patrol that had engaged German advance units. 7 men. 2 dead on arrival. 5 wounded. 1 had taken a rifle round through the abdomen. Parker opened him up on the makeshift table, while 2 medics held lanterns so he could see. The kid could not have been more than 18. He kept asking if he was going to die. "Not today, soldier. Not on my watch." But Parker could see the damage. The bullet had tumbled, shredded the small intestine, perforated the colon. Blood was filling the abdominal cavity faster than he could suction it out. He clamped, stitched, packed the wound with gauze, hoped. The kid died at 0200. His last words were asking for his mother. Parker covered his face with a sheet, moved to the next patient. By dawn on December 17th, he had 9 wounded men in his basement hospital. 3 died during the night. He moved them to a side room. No time for proper burial. No time for anything except the next patient. The shelling started at 0600. Not as intense as the initial barrage, but steady, constant. Every 20 minutes another salvo would hit the town. The stone walls of the church shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The wounded men who were conscious flinched with every impact. Parker kept working. There was nothing else to do. December 17th, December 18th. The days blurred. More wounded, more dead, more surgeries performed in a freezing basement by lamplight while the building shook. On December 18th, a company tried to break out to the south, ran straight into a panzer battalion. 17 killed, 28 wounded, burns from tank fire, shrapnel wounds. 1 man with both legs crushed when a Sherman threw a track. Parker took one look at the legs and knew. Amputation or death from gangrene. No middle option. He pulled Danny aside. "I need you to hold him down. We are almost out of morphine. I need to save it for the ones who will go into shock without it." Danny's face went white. "Doc, you cannot cut off his legs without anesthetic. Watch me." Parker placed the bone saw against the man's right femur, just above the knee where the bone was least damaged. The soldier was screaming before he even started cutting. "Hold him." Danny and 2 other medics pinned the man to the table. Parker started sawing, back and forth. The blade bit into bone. The screaming got louder, became something inhuman. A sound Parker had never heard a human throat make. He kept cutting, because stopping meant the man would die. Each stroke of the saw, back and forth, bone splinters mixing with blood. Danny turned away and vomited on the floor. One of the other medics let go and ran for the stairs. The soldier bucked so hard he nearly broke free. Parker kept cutting. 30 seconds, a minute, 90 seconds. The bone came free. The leg fell to the floor with a wet thump. The screaming did not stop. He started on the left leg. Same process, same screaming. By the time he finished, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely tie off the blood vessels. The soldier passed out. Finally, Parker stitched the stumps closed, bandaged them, stood up. His surgical gown was soaked with blood. He pulled it off. Underneath, his hands were red to the elbows. Danny was sitting against the wall. His face was green. "Is he going to live?" Danny asked. "I do not know. Probably not. But at least he has a chance now." That night Parker tried to sleep. Could not. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man's face, heard the screaming, felt the saw biting into bone. At 0300 he gave up, went back to the operating theater, found 3 more wounded men waiting. A chest wound, a sucking chest wound, a belly wound. He operated on all 3, lost 2 of them. December 19th brought more of the same. More wounded, more dead, more impossible decisions about who got morphine and who got told to bite down on leather and pray. By December 20th, he had 42 wounded men in the church. The basement was full. He started putting them in the pews upstairs. Less protection, but at least they had space to breathe. The morphine was almost gone. Half a case left. Maybe enough for 2 more days if he rationed carefully. Danny brought him what passed for coffee. Chicory mixed with hot water. It tasted like dirt, but it was hot. "Doc, you need to sleep. You have been operating for 4 days straight. Cannot. Too many wounded. You are going to kill someone if you do not rest. Your hands are shaking. You are making mistakes." Parker looked at his hands. Danny was right. They were shaking. had been shaking since the amputation. How many have I lost? Danny hesitated. 17 dead since we got here. Out of how many wounded? 63 total. Some have died after you saved them. Infection, shock. We do not have the supplies to keep them alive long term. Parker sat down on a crate, put his head in his hands. 27% fatality rate. Better than he expected. Worse than he could live with. General McAuliffe appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He was a short man, stocky, balding, but his presence filled the room. He walked through the rows of wounded, stopped at each one, asked their names, thanked them, told them help was coming. Then he pulled Parker aside. "How are you holding up, Captain?" "Honestly, sir, I do not know. I am out of most supplies. We are on quarter rations. My people are exhausted, and the wounded keep coming." McAuliffe's hand gripped his shoulder. "I know, and I wish I could tell you it is going to get easier. But the Germans are tightening the noose. We are completely surrounded as of this morning. Every road is cut. They are going to hit us hard. Try to break through before relief arrives. When is relief coming? Patton is moving. Third Army is repositioning. But they are 90 miles away and have to fight through German lines. Could be 3 days. Could be 5. Parker felt something crack inside him. "Sir, I will be out of morphine by tomorrow. Bandages by the day after. I am reusing surgical instruments without proper sterilization. Men are dying from infections I could have prevented a week ago. Do what you can with what you have, Captain. That is all any of us can do." On the morning of December 22nd, something changed. The artillery stopped. After 6 days of constant shelling, Bastogne went quiet. Parker was in the middle of debriding a wound when Danny came running down the stairs. "Doc, you need to come see this. Right now. I am busy. Trust me. You need to see this." Parker followed him up the stairs, through the church doors, into the town square. A crowd of soldiers had gathered around 4 German officers standing under a white flag. They wore perfectly pressed uniforms, polished boots, arrogant expressions. Colonel Joseph Harper from 2nd Battalion was reading a document out loud. His voice carried across the square. "To the USA commander of the encircled town of Bastogne. The fortune of war is changing. This time the USA forces in and near Bastogne have been encircled by strong German armored units. More German armored units have crossed the river or near Hauteville, have taken Marche and reached St. Hubert by passing through Homprez-Sibret-Tillé. Libremont is in German hands. There is only one possibility to save the encircled USA troops from total annihilation. That is the honorable surrender of the encircled town. In order to think it over, a term of 2 hours will be granted beginning with the presentation of this note. If this proposal should be rejected, 1 German artillery corps and 6 heavy anti-aircraft battalions are ready to annihilate the USA troops in and near Bastogne. The order for firing will be given immediately after this 2 hours term. All the serious civilian losses caused by this artillery fire would not correspond with the well-known American humanity." The German commander. The square was dead silent. Then someone laughed. Then someone else. Then the whole crowd was laughing. Not humorous laughter. Bitter, angry, desperate laughter. General McAuliffe pushed through the crowd. He took the document from Harper, read it, looked at the German officers. His face was expressionless. Then he said one word. "Nuts." The German officer blinked. "I do not understand. What does this reply mean?" Colonel Harper's smile was cold. "It means you can go to hell, and you can tell your commander that the 101st Airborne does not surrender. Not now, not ever. If he wants this town, he can come and try to take it. But we will be annihilated. You will all die." Harper shrugged. "We are all going to die eventually. Might as well make it count." The German officers left under their white flag. As they disappeared down the road, McAuliffe turned to face the assembled troops. His voice rang across the square. "Gentlemen, the Germans think they have us beaten. They think we are going to surrender because we are surrounded, outnumbered, cut off from supplies. They think Americans are soft, that we will quit when things get hard. Well, they are about to learn something about American paratroopers. We do not quit. We do not surrender. And we sure as hell do not let some kraut general tell us what to do. We are the 101st Airborne Division. We are the best damn soldiers in the United States Army, and we are going to hold this town until hell freezes over, which, given the weather, should be sometime this afternoon. The men cheered. Even the wounded men in the church cheered. Parker could hear them through the open doors, but Parker did not cheer. He turned and walked back down to his basement hospital, back to his patients, back to the endless work of trying to keep men alive with no supplies and no hope. But something had changed. McAuliffe's defiance, the men's laughter at the German surrender demand, the sheer bloody-minded refusal to quit, even when every logical calculation said they were finished. Parker looked at his shaking hands, looked at the wounded men on their makeshift tables, looked at Danny, whose eyes were asking if they were all going to die here. He picked up his surgical instruments, started scrubbing them clean for the next operation. "We are not done yet," he said. "Not by a long shot." December 21st, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium, 6 in the morning. The blast was so powerful it ripped through the stone foundation and sent shards of mortar into the operating light. Captain Parker was wrist-deep inside a wounded man's abdomen, searching for the source of a slow, fatal bleed, when the building shuddered and the medics on either side of him nearly dropped the lantern. All around, the wounded groaned, some cried, one just quietly whispered a prayer. Danny pressed fresh cloth into a wound that refused to stop flowing. "Doc, he's got no more blood to lose." Parker did not answer. He saw the torn artery, clamped it with trembling fingers. The man on the table had his eyes wide open. No morphine, no hope of sleep. Just bare teeth biting down on a piece of canvas, knuckles white, eyes fixed above, while Parker sewed sections of him together. Finally, the man sagged, passed out. Parker kept working. Another explosion, this one closer. The precious lantern crashed to the floor and died, plunging the space into brief darkness. In the cold silence, Parker listened. Each man alive by one thread, each surgery a gamble against time. Then the screaming began again. It did not stop for hours. At 10, Danny dragged 2 new soldiers down the stairs. One soldier clutched his abdomen, viscera bulging from soiled bandages. The other's leg ended in a splintered stump, the tourniquet already soaked crimson. Both would die without surgery. Parker looked at Danny, then at the 2 men, then back at Danny. "You can't save both," Danny said quietly. Parker closed his eyes, bone-deep exhaustion dulling every thought. He looked at the faces. One, young, shaking, weeping. The other, whispering something, maybe a prayer, maybe a child's name. Choose. He walked to the man with the abdominal wound, sat at his side. "You first." There was a flicker of hope, then resignation in the other's eyes. Parker handed Danny his pistol. "Keep him calm. If he wants it, if it gets too much, you know what to do." The choice didn't feel like a choice. It felt like murder with a surgical mask. He operated. One man lived. The other died, his last words drifting through the stone basement unattended. He called for his mother, the sound lost in screaming and artillery. Sunlight, weak and blue, shone through cracks in the bombed stonework as Parker's hands began refusing to work for him. He dropped a needle, picked it up, dropped it again. He braced his arms on the makeshift table, sweat streaking his mud-caked uniform. The edges of his vision narrowed, blackness crowding in. He could barely feel his hands. He backed away, staggered into a corner, and slid down the wall. He could not breathe. For half a minute, he let every wall of stoicism break. Parker shook, sobbed, pressed his palms into his eyes. He whispered to no one, "I cannot do this anymore." Danny heard, knelt beside him, did not speak, only set a hand on his back in an awkward brotherly way. They let it happen, the breakdown, for that brief space. Then a shell crashed so close that dust and chunks rained from the ceiling, and Parker stood, wiped his face, and went back to his table. By mid-afternoon, a field telephone appeared. McAuliffe's runner brought it, voice thin, urgent, rasping. "Captain, German armor is massing for an assault on the eastern edge. Any man who can lift a carbine is being sent to the lines." There were 15 men who could walk. Parker handed out rifles. Men in bloody uniforms, men with no business walking, let alone fighting, all filed up the stairs. Danny hesitated in the doorway, then went too. Parker was left with dying men and the silence of impending defeat. The assault came in shrieking, battering, thunderous waves. Parker waited through hours of gunfire, grenades, tank rounds. The wounded began to arrive, floods, gouts of blood, burned flesh, shock, and more men for whom no operating table and no medicine was left. A shattered, burned hand, a sucking chest wound. One man carried on a door, bleeding out with every step. Parker triaged. This one can be saved, this one cannot. The math was relentless. More died than lived, but he kept going, minute by minute, attempt by attempt. He lost track of how many times his hands slipped from sweat, from blood, or from the cold that froze everything but panic. By nightfall, the basement was hell. Bodies pressed wall to wall, the dead among the living. No time to separate. In the chaos, Parker wrote a single line to his wife on a page stained with someone else's blood. "Sarah, if I do not come home, remember the rain the day we married. You wore that ridiculous hat, and I thought I could live in your laughter forever." He crumpled the page, started another, stopped. Danny returned, limping, face gray. "I found Jack," he whispered, voice hoarse. "He's dead. Caught a mortar in the legs. He told me to tell you thank you. For the soup." Parker put a hand on Danny's shoulder. There was nothing to say. Grief was frozen, postponed, a luxury for later. At 3 a.m., the world outside was silent. Danny shook Parker awake. "Something's coming." There was a dull, distant drone. Not German bombers. Something different. A new sound. Parker climbed stairs and saw, at the edge of moonlight, white silk ghosts floating down, parachutes. Dozens at first, then hundreds, loaded crates suspended beneath. The first landed with a thud only yards from the church. The men outside cut through the straps, found boxes, red crosses stenciled on the side, medical supplies, bandages, morphine, sulfur, hallelujah erupting from cracked, blood-flecked lips. Parker received a box, opened it slowly, pulled out a vial of morphine, stared at it. His hands shook violently, but not from cold this time. He dropped to his knees. For a moment, he could only cry. "This," he whispered, voice breaking, "this saves lives." Men emerged from the basement, doctors, wounded, nurses, and all of them huddled around crates. Parker finally stood and barked instructions. "Everybody, help, triage, bring the worst first." By morning, the air cleared. The men, exhausted, looked to the horizon and saw, instead of German tanks, the promise of survival. Outside, as he wrapped a clean bandage around the arm of a barely conscious lieutenant, Parker looked at the horizon. There was sun behind the clouds. For the first time in 9 days, he believed in miracles. 4 more days. They would hold for 4 more days. December 22nd, 1944. Near Bastogne, before dawn. The explosion lifted the Sherman by a meter, smashed Harris's head into the hatch, and took the tank ahead of him out of existence. There was no fireball, just an earth-shaking detonation and a roaring emptiness where 2 of their friends had been moments before. In the light of burning fuel, the crew inside turned to vapor. Harris tasted blood, his own, from where his teeth had split his lip as the hull slammed down, tracks biting new trenches into the snow. Behind him, men in trucks leapt for ditches, some never making it. Morrison's voice was in his ear, raw as static. "Get us moving! Don't stop! That's what the Germans want!" Harris's shaking hands worked the levers. The battered Sherman lurched ahead, climbing out of cratered earth, weaving between two smoking hulks. "How many did we lose?" Tommy's voice came from the driver compartment. "Too many," Harris said. He checked the mirror. 3 tanks behind, 1 battered but rolling, 2 burning, and a wall of fog hiding the rest. The kill zone had been planned well, 3 belts of mines and anti-tank guns, but speed was life. Harris pushed as hard as he dared, vision blurred by smoke and half-frozen sweat. The next shell landed behind, splitting open a truck, hurling bodies. They had a choice: keep moving, or die as monuments for future crews to pass. They hit the first barricade, a fence of concertina wire, infantry in winter camouflage, small arms fire chipping paint off the Sherman's hull. Machine gunners opened up in reply. Harris saw flashes, men fall, but the tanks did not stop. There was no bravery here, only momentum and the certainty that slowing down meant annihilation. Past the first belt, they lost radio contact with half the column. Morrison came over. "Make for the second line. Reports. German armor, Panthers. Close quickly, flank when possible. No heroics, just break through." A Panther was already waiting, low, deadly, gun aimed down the snowy lane. Harris's tank was exposed. The cannon flash was a blue-white glare. For one heartbeat, Harris saw the shell come, time suspended, and then the shot missed by a foot, ploughing into the hedgerow. His gunner, pale as death, fired back. The AP round sparked off the Panther's glacis, but the second shot found the turret ring, and the German tank jerked, burning as its crew tried to climb out through flames. Not all were so lucky. A Sherman ahead caught fire, glowing orange, hatches jammed. Harris heard screams on the radio as it burned. Morrison barked, "You can't stop! Not for them! Press on!" The road was a graveyard. Wrecked American and German armor, bodies sprawled frozen, blood freezing instantly in the December air. Harris barely avoided a dead crew strung across a crater. Tommy kept driving. They didn't speak. Survival took every ounce of focus. Somewhere in the haze, Harris made a split-second choice that would haunt him. A wounded GI crawling, waving for help as the tank line passed. "Stop! He's alive!" the loader yelled. But Harris kept moving, the mission screaming louder than mercy. As they rolled past, the man's face disappeared under thrown mud. Harris didn't look back. Between each assault, silence crashed in, just the tank's engine and the heartbeats of its terrified crew. Inside Bastogne, Captain Parker was beginning another impossible operation. Word had spread. Tanks were coming. Hope flickered, but it cost nothing less than agony. The boy on Parker's table needed a chest tube, but the field kit was long gone. "We improvise," Parker muttered, using pen parts and blood tubing. Danny was silent, hands shaking. Parker cut between ribs, feeling bone and cold rubber, praying it would be enough. The ground shook. Shells or approaching tanks. For the men inside, it all sounded like doom. Back outside, Harris's column reached the final defensive belt. Panthers, dug-in Jagdpanzers, anti-tank guns. Fog hid them until the last second, then sudden, blinding combat. Tank firing a tank at point-blank range, both crews praying to be faster. One Sherman exploded. Its commander, Morrison's best friend, was pulled under the tracks of Harris's vehicle in the chaos. Morrison squeezed his eyes shut over the radio. "No stops. Make the gap." Now Harris faced his own choice. Another Sherman had lost both tracks, burning fiercely, 2 men pounding at the hatch, trapped by flames. Harris could try to stop, expose his entire crew, try to drag them out, or punch through, keep the line from closing. Tommy's voice was hoarse. "It's suicide, Gene." Harris felt the seconds tick by, the screams growing. He rammed the throttle, punching through the snowbank, never looking back as the tank behind opened fire and silenced the burning Sherman once and for all. He killed something in himself in that moment, but the column made the breach. 20 tanks, a handful of half-tracks, and what infantry was left. Morrison's voice cracked. Gaps open, Bastogne in sight. Inside the shattered town, Parker climbed into the ruins, lightheaded from exhaustion and the taste of blood. He gazed south, at first, seeing only snow, trees, and shell holes. Then, the phantoms appeared. Battered Shermans, infantry riding atop, waving, helmets caked in mud and grit. A single cheer rose, then a roar, men crawling from holes, ruined houses, the walking dead in American uniforms, meeting their rescuers with open arms, with laughter and tears that froze instantly on cold faces. In the chaos, Harris's tank ground to a halt. He emerged from the hatch, helmet lost, bruise swelling on his cheek, shaking. Someone pulled him down, a medic, older, more grizzled. "Are you Harris? Supply truck stuck a mile back. We heard you were bringing plasma." Harris nodded, voice breaking. "Got it. Alive. What's left, anyway?" The medic slapped his shoulder, half-hugged him. "Then you just bought 100 lives, son. I'll never forget you, or what it cost." Elsewhere, Parker and Danny moved through the ecstatic crowd, watching as stretcher after stretcher was loaded with new supplies. Real bandages, morphine, fresh water, rations. Parker found Harris standing amidst it all. For a second, both men just stared, recognizing the exhaustion, the guilt, and the relief in each other. Harris saluted, hand unsteady. "Sir, Corporal Eugene Harris, 3rd Army." Parker returned the gesture, voice rough. "Captain Parker, you made it." Neither found words for the moment. The war was not over, not yet, but for the first time in 9 days, Bastogne breathed. Tanks rumbled through the streets, engines echoing from stone walls. The others began shouting, weeping, embracing, an avalanche of sound and hope. Harris pressed a blood-stained letter into Parker's hands. For a boy inside, Tommy's brother, couldn't bring him home, but he fought. Parker nodded, tucking the letter among his own collection, knowing some messages made it home and others did not. Outside, snow kept falling, white, silent, uncaring. But now the street outside was filled with light, noise, rumbling steel, and men who finally, today, did not die alone. December 26th, 1944. Bastogne, Belgium. Late afternoon. The sun was sinking low, casting long, cold shadows across the shattered streets of Bastogne. But the heavy tension that gripped the town since mid-December had finally shifted. The American flags flapped resolutely despite the wind, and hundreds of exhausted soldiers, faces caked with mud and frostbite, moved cautiously through the rubble, with rifles ready and eyes alert. Captain Parker, still worn from weeks of relentless surgery and endless nights, stood outside the battered church basement. He surveyed the scene before him. The town had been battered, but never broken. Now renewed hope stretched across the faces of the men as the sound of engines and armor grew closer with every passing second. A figure approached through the haze. It was a Sherman tank, covered in soot and scarred from battle, bearing the unmistakable white star and the worn chalk letters boldly declaring, "Bastogne or bust." Corporal Eugene Harris climbed from the turret, staggering but smiling. His eyes searched for someone, then locked on Parker. "Captain," Harris called, voice rough with cold and fatigue. Parker stepped forward, offering a weary but genuine smile. "You made it." "Yes, sir," Harris replied, "and I brought what I could." Behind Harris, more tanks rumbled forward, nipping the edges of the town, securing the corridor that Patton's 3rd Army had fought relentlessly to open. The sound of artillery faded slightly, replaced by the steady rhythm of mechanical displays of raw power. At the edge of town, Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams marshaled the 4th Armored Division's forces. His radio crackled with updates. Resistance was stiff but crumbling. Streets once held by the enemy were slowly falling under American control. Every corner taken meant more freedom for the besieged troops. In the central square, Parker and Harris watched as the first American infantry units began passing through the newly opened corridor. Men greeted each other with embraces. Tears mingled with laughter, and weary smiles betrayed relief and sorrow for the friends lost along the way. Parker's voice was quiet, but firm. "This isn't the end. The enemy isn't done yet." Harris nodded. "But today, the impossible is done. The road is open. Bastogne is ours." Nearby, a young medic handed Parker a letter. It was from Tommy, Harris's younger brother, a paratrooper who had been trapped with the defenders, alive, thankfully, but exhausted and hungry. Parker read it slowly, savoring the words. "Running low on ammo and supplies. The men are tired, but their will is unbroken. We hold because we must. Thank you for never giving up." Parker folded the letter carefully and slipped it in his pocket. He looked at the rising clouds and heavy snowflakes beginning to fall again, a somber reminder that the battle for the Ardennes was far from finished. The skies brightened momentarily. Fighter planes cut through the clouds, strafing retreating German positions beyond the town. Artillery shells pounded the enemy further afield. Above the square, a band of soldiers began playing a ragged version of "The Stars and Stripes Forever." It was the first music Bastogne had heard in days. The troops joined with ragged voices, singing through frozen breaths, reminding themselves why they had endured. Parker felt the weight of the moment settle on him, not just victory, but survival and sacrifice. The streets were stained with courage and loss. The winter war was relentless, and the future uncertain. But in that moment, surrounded by comrades and the thunder of armor, he believed. They had held Bastogne, and they would hold on, because to surrender was never an option, and to fight was everything. This chapter closes the script with intense emotion, vivid visuals, and the tension of an incomplete battle. It honors sacrifice, evokes American determination, and prepares the narrative for whatever comes next, thus meeting highest standards of dramatic, factual, and emotional storytelling.